are listening to the most comprehensive paranormal archive on the internet.
Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight we'll be talking about 3 a.m. and the time surrounding that and paranormal activity. As always, you can find everything associated with the podcast at the website, and that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. And that includes links to all the episodes of the show, social media, ways to support the show, and friends of the show, including Jen, the Arcane Observer, who has her own channel and is the co-host of this show on Saturdays, and once in a while other days as well. And that's where you can find all that. And speaking of that, this is a Saturday as we're recording here, so happy to have Jen back on with me. Jen, welcome to the show again.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. It was cool today, and now it's gotten a little warmer, but it's still not as bad as it has been. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here. And we've talked about this a little bit in the past, and there is something kind of weird about it. I mean, especially for night owls that are really, just up during that window of time, you can definitely tell. But then some people who actually go to sleep, they still wake up at that same time. So there's a lot to cover. I'm looking forward to it, and thank you for having me.
No problem. Yeah, and I didn't even bother with the articles this time because I figure we've both heard and researched enough and talked to people enough that I didn't think we really needed to bother with a lot of sources tonight. Partly because my eyes are still slightly irritated, so I'm just taking it easy on the visual research lately. But yeah, because that's one thing I found is there is the stereotypical terrifying encounter with a being or just the sound of knocking, like 3 knocks at 3 a.m., that kind of thing that you hear about. And of course, it's probably I'm sure it's been used in movies and TV shows countless times. But that is sort of the one version of that everyone knows. But there's a lot surrounding this that is maybe not so well known, in that, yeah, it's not always anything else happening except people waking up at that time and not knowing why. I found a post about that a while ago where this family moved into a place, and as soon as they did, they started, one or more of them would wake up at 3 a.m. or right around there, several times a week for no apparent reason, and nothing else happened. There was no apparitions, no sounds, nothing else besides just waking up at that time in that one location, which I really thought was odd.
Have you experienced it yourself too? So I have, like, so many times.
Once in a while. It's more so in previous years, or sometimes if I'm going to bed way early because I'm not feeling great, I will wake up. Yeah, it does happen once in a while. It's and it's really weird because I can never pinpoint why I wake up at that time. It's not like I feel a presence, or at least that I know of, nothing conscious anyway. But yeah, I have had that happen here and there, not to the extreme of that one post I found about, a family's experiencing it, but still, here and there, yes.
Yeah, I have too. And it doesn't always have to do with anything really paranormal going on, for sure. Like just kind of like regularly waking up, or even looking at the clock and it says like 9:11 or 3:33. I've had that happen, or 11:11. People say it's just you're noticing a coincidence because, but it's weird how you just happen to look at it and it says that. Like, I don't look at, but maybe we don't notice it is the excuse for it. But I would say that's okay if there wasn't all the symbolism associated with those numbers anyway. I know this is not really a numerological, show exactly, but the 3 a.m. thing has more to do with not really so much the time on the clock as much as it is about, like, the clock telling you, like, I don't know, it just stands out as a feeling that. And it's weird that you're having that kind of moment and wake up to the clock saying that,
Right.
If you didn't have a clock, you wouldn't know why, it would be significant, but you just wake up in the middle of the night. Now, I've heard that, like, in the old world, people used to go to sleep and then they'd wake up in the middle of the night and have, like, a lot of deep thinking and sort of have a window of time in the middle of the night where they, like, would wake up and go visit with friends and kind of think and then go back to bed. So I've heard that before too. Have you heard that?
I hadn't until I heard you. I think it was you talking about that. I can't remember where now. It was either your channel and or Trouble Minds. There's so much that we both listened to over the years here. But yeah, I hadn't heard that until I heard it from you and some other people
It's a
online
real
and on
thing.
shows. Yeah, but that makes sense in a way. I mean, if you think about when it gets dark, usually at night, even like in the summertime in some places, it still gets dark by like what 10 p.m. at the latest, maybe 10:30. So if you do go to bed and you're able to get to sleep right away, and then you sleep from like 10:30 or 11 until till 3. I mean, that's a good 3 or 4 hours of sleep right there to have, and then to wake up and to have enough energy to do that, to wake up and do some things for a little while there. And it makes sense to me also that that time at night, especially like maybe in a place that's where you feel fairly safe overall and secure, and um, you're not worrying about survival so much that there's this quiet time, even if nature does whatever nature does surround you, there is this quiet time, and that would lead to or lend more to having the chance to think deeper thoughts and to visit with people and just sort of have those conversations with them at that time, more so than maybe you could in the daytime.
Yeah, because I mean, you've gotten yourself some like some REM sleep, some REM sleep right there. And then the troubles of the day are like a separate world from you at that point. And then you wake up in the middle of the night. You don't have the same kind of world we have today. Like you'd wake up in the middle of the night, maybe after a sleep, and then your mind is in a completely different space because you're in the nocturnal world. It's just a different type of, I guess a different type of tempo, basically, and then you go to sleep again. So it's like you have two separate days, you know what I mean, that are divided up. So you have two separate kind of lives a
Right.
person would have, like their daytime life and then their nighttime life, sort of divided up by two different sleep spectrums. This was a world before, that was a world before a lot of other things were going on. So there's something,
True.
I think there's something to it.
And then, I mean, depending on when it gets light outside, that could be what, 7? Almost, I mean, in some places 6 or 7 or maybe 8. So you could be up for half hour, and still go to bed and get few more hours sleep uh, before you have to get up for the day, maybe. So that's, I mean, yeah, I could totally see that happening. So yeah, I wonder if that's sort of a holdover, maybe, do you think, from that time where something to do with it's in our DNA, like a leftover thing in our, I don't know, consciousness, or that we remember from through some kind of connection to our ancestors or something. I'm not sure. And I mean, I'm not saying that in any disrespectful way at all. I'm just really curious how that would hold over so strongly from that that period where there weren't lights all around at all times and vehicles around at all times and all these things we have now.
Yeah, it's a
So,
different world now. I mean, we find
right.
ways around it. People get kind of profiled as like, you know, maybe nighttime person, daytime person. But the thing is like we just live in a world that's trying to put people into different, spectrums of how they exist. Because they want people to fit into the world they've made instead of the
Right.
world that people deserve to have, which is like the way that they want to live their life. And
Yeah.
so I think that at the sleep state and everything too, like that's something that you still can't really control entirely. Like that's why people will find themselves like even having insomnia because they're expected to sleep for a straight, you know what I mean, 8 or 9 hours, but they don't really need to sleep that much. But then they can't sleep later on in the day when they kind of want to. Like they're being made to like sleep in a certain way to fit society, the way that it operates. I remember I worked nights for a long time and it actually worked out really well for me in a lot of ways, but it just kind of depends. But I always enjoyed it, and I always liked it. It was kind of neat too to wake up at like dawn and then go to bed at dawn or like dusk and dawn. It was nice, but
Right.
because the whole world's asleep almost, and so it's like a whole different layer.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's just something about it being so overall so quiet, not even necessarily quiet as far as sound levels, but just maybe quiet as far as like not as many people around making sounds, not as many possible. Just being aware of people moving around. You know that there's most people around you are not moving around. They're in bed. They're asleep. So yeah, I do get that. That's one thing I enjoy here. Partly because of my own situation with my eyes being so sensitive to light. I do stay up until usually at least 2 or 3 in the morning. Sometimes 4 or 5 on days where I can't get to sleep right away. But yeah. So and then that's not even counting, like we said, all the paranormal stuff that happens when people are sleeping. And I do think that comes from that connection when we're in those different states of consciousness to possibly other levels of reality, other realms, whatever you want to call them. And that's where all these other energies and or entities, consciousness can interact with us. And that's where you get the knocks, and not always in groups of three, but sometimes in your surroundings or bumps. Uh, you get sleep paralysis too, and that's a whole other thing. I think we touched on that last time too, actually. And that's a whole thing where I do think there's a scientific thing, but also I think that other entities can sort of be aware of that and take advantage of that
Yeah.
to make contact when you're in that
You
state
know,
too.
one weird thing about it, like the sleep paralysis thing, is I don't know that I ever, like, that what I was experiencing was exactly sleep paralysis. I think I was just so surprised at what I was seeing that it was so bizarre and out of place. Like you're in your room, you're going to sleep and everything, and then you see something or you hear something, you know. And the thing about that is that you wouldn't it's like you kind of freeze up because you could move. Like I could have moved if I wanted to, but I was just so like in that moment, like what am I looking at? Like what am I seeing? You know, and looking really intently, you know. It's a very inner world experience almost. Like on the outside, you're very still, but on the inside, you're just like trying to figure out what you're looking at, you know, and checking through the boxes, and nothing fits any of those boxes. And so then you're like, wow, you know, so it's not so much that, and sometimes by the time that whole experience is over and you've processed it, like it's ended, you know, like the
Yeah,
sighting has ended. So it's like that almost. Not like so much, I don't know that I was ever just like paralyzed. You know, I think I could have moved. I think I just didn't.
yeah. I wonder how often that the two sort of get um, mixed up with each other in people's minds as far as they think. Like you just described, that you think that maybe you were paralyzed, but it's more you just didn't want to move and you were still just trying to figure out what was going on. And if something you see or hear lasts just a handful of seconds, then there's really not much time to physically move to react in that kind of situation. So that makes a lot of
No,
sense.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that's very likely. That's kind of what I, you know, come to conclusion of. But I mean, who knows? It could be
Right.
something being emitted from, you know, like you're in a certain, almost like in between the worlds, like you have accidentally slipped in between the worlds as while you were entering the sleep state. And something about being in that zone has that sort of effect almost where like you're locked in. Like you're
Yep.
locked in for the moment between you and that entity about like, you know, focus, or maybe it's not even an entity, but just a type of like an energy. Kind of like when you encounter, you know, like a deer or a lion or something. It's like a weird
Right.
exchange occurring, you know, but it's something completely alien feeling, like the type of thing that you're encountering. And you're also, you know, typically falling asleep or you've woken up from being asleep. So there's this whole, the liminal space concept. But then too, the back to the 3 a.m. It's the some people have said midnight. I've heard 3 a.m., but it's like the witching hour. It's
Right.
like where you're able to see that world more clearly. It's a crossroads boundary, like you're entering into the deep of the night, into the like that. It's a liminal space because you're going into, you know, on the numbers, the AM, you're going deeper into the AM, you know, but there's a sort of, I think it's a liminal space experience that we put a number to, but it's the shifting of the entire environment. Like after it's been submerged in however much or however little light or darkness, it changes the way that it feels or something. The world, you know what I mean? Like being in the shade of like out of the sun. Maybe it's a
Yeah.
different type of experience if everything has to do, not to get weird or anything, but with the way that light works and everything, maybe being in that is what's causing the effect. I've heard of a lot of plants that have to be in a certain amount of darkness and things like that. So that's really interesting, and how we don't have that so much anymore. Like there's constant exposure to all kinds of different forms of artificial light. But yeah, I don't know.
Right. And I've come across accounts where people had experiences that were at, 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. I think the light and the shadow and the darkness really is the main thing here. I mean, I know there's, I think it's like biblical references to 3 a.m. being, mocking the Trinity and in religious terms, but there's so many experiences where people have, so many times where people have experiences and it doesn't seem to fit that exactly or even at all. And and then if you think about time, I mean, 3 o'clock is just a number we give to a certain point in a day in time and space. And then I mean, you have time zones, you have all these things, these systems that we have, but in the end, it's still what it comes down to is it's either dark or it's light outside, you know, and that point in that middle of that darkness, that window of probably 4 to 5 to maybe 6 hours or whatever, that makes sense that there could be that darkness, those different configuration of darkness and light could lead to anomalous things happening.
Yeah, it could shift some kind of brain patterns.
Right.
We know that must be true. They say that like too much the blue light studies, and I think people talking about how the blue light keeps you awake and things like that. So we are affected by this. I mean, I'm not talking about technology. I mean, just the typical natural light, like starlight and the moonlight or the lack of it, and how that's something rooted so deep within the organism of patterns. Like that's real hardwired stuff, that the creature is biologically wired for this amount of moonlight or this amount of sunlight or however it works. Or maybe at some point, like maybe the adaptation of the change of that. Like there was a time we've talked about this before on Troubled Minds and on other stuff. And I've always, I've heard about it, but like the time in the world before the moon existed, or like
Hmm.
that there was a different star that was the sun at one point, or that the sun has been through many different phases over the entire like the history of the planet. How the planet has been a different expression of different planets, even like it's went through phases of different, habitable or inhabitable conditions, and different types of species that would have lived at that time. But if you look at like modern humanity, we're wired to live in the environment for. Look how we're changing now that the environment has been artificially altered too. I wonder what the effect would be of that. And what's left over in us, that's naturally kind of shining through, like the awkward sleep patterns and everything, or just the way that people are kind of adapting and how they're having to kind of go against the grain even of what feels natural for them. But I think that the change in
And
the light is a huge part of it, of
yeah,
brain
I mean,
patterns.
it all comes down to different types of energy and how we interact with that energy. And I mean, that's if there's anything to the idea that there are disembodied consciousness out there that are just tied somehow to energy fields and taking in energy to stay around or to exist or to do things, then it is all literally all connected in some way, or at least it seems like it could be. And sometimes experiences happen where it's not like what you see in the movies. Obviously, it's not like a full blown terrifying apparition. It's just some knocks or bumps in a room, maybe a sighting of orbs or lights that appear and then vanish. All these kinds of things where they're relatively subtle, and I mean, still more than just waking up at that time, which I think could be all like we've been talking about, more of a natural thing. I hadn't even thought about that before, but that makes sense. But if you're waking up to see these different things, or waking up because you feel a presence, then is it that time, or isn't that level of dark and light that is making it easier for these other beings to interact as well, not just with the connection to the human mind, but just with the levels of light and or darkness. I mean, and we know there's shadow figures and there's figures of light that people see at different times throughout the day, and shadows that are darker than the darkness, and then lights that are brighter than everything else around them. So uh, anyway, I feel like that was a huge ramble there, but I
No,
think it is
that's
all
exactly what
connected.
I kind of think so too, you know. About
Yeah.
especially, it stands out what you're making, the point that people typically see things that are darker than the dark, or like you said,
Hmm.
also too brighter than the brightness. And the other thing I thought of is, the classic mythos, like the classic lore, like a vampire can't come out into the daylight or the sunlight, or like in the movie Gremlins, like don't feed it chicken after midnight,
Mm.
or don't get it wet, or don't, all these particulars about these certain creatures. It's really interesting, like with the vampire lore, that they have to get out of the sunlight. There's something, a very old concept that we're working with here about, that in general, but also how that's been villainized. You see
Right.
what I'm saying? Like there could be, because there was a time I remember reading about where there was some type, like some time in, you know throughout humanity where people were in a lot of that, this sort of not bright light, not dark light, because I've heard about the planet being aligned differently than it is. This is part of that. I can't remember who really thoroughly ever covered it. It was I did a show with Mike about it a long time ago about Saturn, the Saturn cult, and basically the idea that Saturn was the sun in our sky at that point, and a lot of the modern Saturn worship, or why they even acknowledge it, is because it was much closer. And in fact, the theory goes that it was the sun, it was the main star that we were locked in orbit with, and that's been pulling away, but still even holds like a magnetic hold on the planet. But at that time, when we were liminally locked with it, it was like a perpetual twilight, is what they refer to it. The theorists that I've read so much about it, but I can't remember like exactly the people that were. You could find it easily if people were to look it up. But basically, the idea that the Earth was enveloped in like a purple haze. It was like a between day and night, but there was a whole part on the planet that was completely engulfed in absolute darkness, and like it never got any light whatsoever, and a type of life form of all kinds of like an ecosystem emerged in it. But whenever the Earth lost its tidal lock with Saturn and got pulled into the orbit of the sun, it basically just changed the entire environment. And actually, a lot of the way the Earth is sort of set up with the ice and I guess all the different, like the way that they said that it didn't rain until the sun, like that Saturn, rain didn't come from the sky. There would be barely even a breeze. But like because of the sun, it created breeze and rain. And before that, the water was coming up out of the ground in fountains, is what they say in the theory. But anyway, though, basically living in perpetual twilight. Then you have the shift over to being in tidally locked with well, not tidally locked with the sun, but orbiting the sun. At that point, then, also that the way that we are linked up with the moon. But the moon was pulled in, or that it might have always been there, is what some theorize, but you couldn't see it until we were pulled out of that plasma cloud of Saturn. And then people could see it then. And a lot of times people say that a lot of the moon symbology and everything is actually like the ice that eventually, basically the rings of Saturn are our oceans. Are like
Oh
whenever this
wow.
happens, this collision, or not a collision, but it's a more of a shifting orbits, that the oceans and the way that this all happened was like our oceans are creating the rings of Saturn, and people could see that, and like it looked like slivers of like a crescent moon in the sky, and that symbolism is ancient memory, basically, of that event. So is the classic nuclear pinch, is like a plasma pinch you see now in like a nuclear reactors. I think it's like on the side of a basketball. Looks like a squatting man, like holding up the sky. But they
Huh.
say that that's a memory from the sky, like that's been put down in pictographs, or I'm sorry, petroglyphs on rocks. There's a difference. I guess absolutely. So
Yeah.
petroglyphs are on rocks themselves. So petroglyphs, but they would have that kind of imagery on them. And they say that people were painting what they were seeing in the sky, and it looked like sometimes it looked like a war with a dragon. And that was like the case whenever, like, basically when all the planets were just kind of, our stars or whatever, are getting situated as we were getting adjusted into being orbit with the sun. But I don't know what kind of effect that would have for the 3 a.m. thing, but probably, I think there's some kind of magnetic shift in the earth when the light's moving across it. You know what I mean? Or something like that. I don't know. There's all kinds of weird theories that could fit. There's the popular theories we already have in science, but there are alternative theories. It doesn't have to be locked in, in stone. We could talk about, but
Right. Yeah.
mystery.
I'm thinking it may not be the right name, but I'm thinking I feel like I've heard of this with Saturn. Is it Velikovsky?
I don't know. Let's see. There's many different people have talked about it. That sounds
Okay.
familiar. So I mean, this is
Yeah.
like a fairly popular theory in a lot of. I would definitely say fringe, even in the conspiracy circuit. It's sort of a fringe
Right.
topic, But
Okay.
yeah, it's interesting.
It is. And I mean, if energy fields or levels or distribution has been different over time, that's one of the things that you mentioned on one of Mike's shows when you were on there too, I don't know, a year or 2 or 3 ago. Time is weird, I forget now. That the levels of uh, magnetic energy on this planet way back when used to be a lot higher or stronger, and
Yeah,
that's the time when there was mythology about all kinds of creatures, all kinds of
talking,
beings.
and yeah, there was a
And
sort of exactly that we don't know that now. But at
right,
one point, there was a entirely different. The magnetic field was much different, and so we don't
yeah,
have. I mean, there's memory of it, but we were like able to live in that. But I mean, it had been a completely different sort of experience of existence. And I've even heard theories of. I don't know if you've heard of it. I can't remember what it's called. But there was a time in humanity where their inner voice, like some people have an inner voice, a lot of people do, and some people don't. But I mean, some people do. And there's a
right,
theory that at one point people couldn't decipher that that was their own inner voice, and they heard it almost outside of themselves. Like they were almost in a state of existence where there was no inner voice, but then they suddenly started to hear that sort of consciousness. Hey, MJ. They could see that kind of, they could hear their own consciousness talking to themselves, but they would hear it like it was outside of themselves, cast out outside of themselves. And it was almost like they were having experiences with God or other
wow,
beings. And they couldn't tell that it was coming from within them. It was some kind of shift in the brain. So it was like entering into consciousness, basically, like, they're going about making, like, growing tomatoes or whatever they're doing. Maybe not having any inner dialogue at all. And then suddenly they hear a voice it's their own voice talking. It's like, but even today, though, people talk, you have an inner dialogue and it doesn't always sound like yourself. But
right,
people would hear like this inner voice dialogue, and they couldn't tell that it was inside their own mind. They thought, and it appeared to be coming from outside of themselves. And so then that's what they were, and the same thing with dreaming, but dreaming, or basically you're sitting at your desk or something, and I ask you to visualize something, or like you're imagining something, or you're playing something out, or you're letting your mind kind of just imagine things. That's a vision, and that's a vision quest. Like whenever you do things like that, that is what that is. That's what they would call it back then, because that is what it is.
right,
It's the fact that you can see in that other world. And that might not have always been, or maybe there's some kind of separation, maybe prior to the experience of hearing it. I don't know, but somehow they were thinking that they were hearing that outside of themselves. Now, I think there could be a lot of twist on that. I haven't thought about it till just now, but I'm gonna have to think on that because there might be some kind of twist to that.
yeah. Well, I mean, there's plenty of accounts of people even up to this day where they feel like they have, and I mean, I had this a slight experience with it myself, where they feel like they've had contact with other beings telepathically, um,
Oh
or
yeah.
they've seen beings, and the being it didn't look like the being physically spoke, but they heard the voice. I mean, that's all over the place in UFO alien experiences, reports of that. I mean, there's that with even with ghosts or spirits, that kind of communication. I guess I've had a couple of experiences with that. So, but I mean, that's why all this can be so confusing. If you're, I mean, if you if there was that if that was that way back when where you could hear, it seemed like your own conversation was coming from outside of you, and then add to that the possibility of other contact with
Well,
other
see,
beings.
I have a crazy, vivid inner. I've had it since childhood. But, like I have like this incredible visualization, um, highly imaginative, and um, I hear inner dialogue with myself all the time. Like often, whenever I'm working and everything, when I'm at work and I have to really focus, I'm literally talking in my mind to myself about what I need to do, what's left to do. Don't forget this, that, or the other.
Right.
And I have a constant inner dialogue, and I'll think of something else besides the fact of work, and I can envision really potently what I want to see, and I'll do that a lot of times with almost anything. When I was studying, um, a lot of things to do with, I don't know how to describe it, but basically, okay, so like hypnotism and things like that. A big part
Mhm.
of it is having access to this realm of your imagination. And you'll come to find out that a lot of people uh, have to admit that they don't spend a lot of time sort of with themselves that way, with their own mind that way, without getting kind of uncomfortable and needing to get
Right.
distracted from themselves. And sometimes you do. Sometimes you gotta kind of get out of your head, and do something more, outside of yourself. But some people are completely locked out. Like they don't have an inner dialogue. They're worried if they do, like they get uncomfortable with it.
Right.
They think that it means something. It's totally okay, for people to have a strong imagination, for people to visualize things in their mind. That's how people created things. That's how you create things, anything. It has to start from otherwise we're just blowing through life, just, off of physical stuff, like nothing in the inside.
Right.
Like you have to it's okay to have an overactive imagination. You just have to control it a little. Like people need to quit believing that there's something weird about that. That's where stories come from, and great artwork and music and books and movies. And so, and that's within everyone.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
everyone has a different type of story to tell. Some are very, who knows what they want to make of their life or what they want to do. But it all starts in their mind, a big part of it. But then because you have to react to what's happening outside of you. So of course you can't do a lot about that. But what you decide to do once you're acted upon, that's something that may require a lot of imagination. A lot of talking it through with yourself about what you're gonna do. I don't know how we got into this topic, but I was just saying that the voices, like people hearing their inner dialogue and saying that it's God, or
Right.
it's an angel spoke to me. Someone brought me a message, you know. And it doesn't mean that
Yeah.
it didn't happen. It would mean that does it? Like it literally has that kind of impact. So I mean what does it really mean when you say that somebody imagined something? It's like you imagined it. Doesn't make it any less it's just saying yeah, you imagined it, but you can imagine how potent it can be for people, and how do we know that it wasn't actually an encounter from that other realm? Like there's theories, I can't remember the philosopher, I think it was Aristotle, but he talked about how that world is real. And that's where heaven and hell and all of the lore and the entirety of our world exists in that realm. So it's like the Fantasia thing of, but like when we were talking about sleep state and everything, maybe when you go into the sleep state and you got REM sleep, but then you wake up in the middle of the night and you get up for a couple of hours, like say 3 a.m., then you go back to sleep later, that window of time there is like a liminal pocket of the whole rest of the world is quiet. You're insulated within this gate of the middle of the night where you see what I mean? Like you're seeing
Yeah.
a different world of yourself, about yourself and your encounter of it.
Yeah. And you're more likely that it's gonna be you're gonna be by yourself, or at least not have any strangers around at that time usually. And so that would be easier to go into your own self and think about these things. And it's funny because this is something that I do think is there. I think that obviously we make our own ideas, we come up with our own ideas and all that too, but there's been more than a few things that happened over the years, ideas I've gotten or thoughts of things I should do and or feelings and there is no other anomalous things happening at that time. Nothing scary, nothing even profound going on, no apparitions, but just like feelings like I should do this. And then I think back on it like, where did that come from? That felt like it was more than me. I don't know who it was, what it was, but it felt like it was more than me. And it's just there you can I know it's one of those things that like obviously
No,
you
I
can't
totally get it.
prove it, but there's some things like with the nightmares I had a little while back. I come back to this a lot because I still don't know how this happened, but that one week I had nightmares for about a week, and I knew I had these crystals that I gotten as gifts and one that I bought, and I had this feeling like, well, if I just put those crystals beneath my pillow at night, that'll take care of it. That'll drive everything off. I don't know where I got that from. I don't know where I got the idea from. I don't know much at all really about what crystals do what and all those things. I know it's a whole thing, and I'm not saying I don't believe in it. I do think it's a
Hey,
fascinating
look,
thing. And
like you were talking to the wrong duck because like I believe a lot of that. Like I got a hold
yeah,
of some river rocks and I was like, I'm gonna wear this rock on the piece of yarn around my neck and sleep with it and see like what it is. That kind of
right.
thing. And I did. And I got these crazy dreams of a being. And it went on till I took that off. It was, I mean, I was like, wow, this is crazy. I did a video about it a long time ago I took down, I think, or
Yes,
maybe I left it up, but it was
I
this
remember
whole
that.
to-do. Like I could see the being. I encountered it. Like initially there was like a flashback to the creek where I got the rock from, and I saw this person, a woman. She was on the other side of the creek, and she looked really weird, like kind of weird looking. And then the next dream, and she could see me, but she was like looking at me all weird, and I was looking at her weird too. It was like I was seeing something I shouldn't be seeing, but I was seeing it, and she was like, "Can you see me?" It was that kind of weird exchange. Then the next dream, I was in the valley. I was in the place where I lived. There was a valley that went to that creek, so it was a little further away from the creek. And I was walking around in the valley, which is a big hayfield, and there were all these people sleeping out in the field, like, I don't know, maybe like 100 people or something. And they were all laying out in the field. And I was stepping around them. And then I saw that same woman, pardon me, that woman, and she was like across the field a little ways, and she was stepping around them too. And I was like, oh my God, that's so weird. And that dream ended. Then I had another dream where I woke up at my house. I was in my bed and I woke up. It was like like a lucid dream. I got out of my bed and I walked across the living room, around the corner, into the kitchen, and over to the stove. And I was like going to make coffee. And I look over from the stove to my front door and I see this creature. And it's like on all fours, like a bear at the door. And it's got one foot like right inside my door. And it's tall. And it's like standing at my door. And I wake up and I called my mother. I took that thing off. It just was too much. Like I was like, that is so weird. I called my mom. I told her that I'm having the most bizarre dreams and this, that, because I mean, she told me like, well, just turn your back to it and refuse to like just turn your back to it. And
Right.
because I didn't really tell her so much about the rock thing, but it was like I encountered some type of being, and I had several of these. They're called like, I always called them fairy ring rocks and things like that. But people call them different things, but yeah, I think I encountered like a water, like something from that dang creek, for real.
Yeah, I remember that video, and I think I remember you talking about somewhere else, maybe. But yeah, yeah. So when I put those crystals under my bed, that stopped it, and I still don't know where I got the idea from, but I feel like it was from somewhere or someone else.
Oh,
So,
yeah. But as far as the imagination carrying things, not objects necessarily, but sometimes objects, but telling you to do this or that can be very good advice. A person has to have
right.
discernment, about what's helpful and what is not. But that's part of, I mean, life is full of, at least we get to make these kinds of choices, At least we can actually
Yep.
kind of roll things over in our minds and kind of create our own path based off of our own judgment. And we all have a real judgment, of our lives. And it's inside of us. We can really see. And the lie is that the outside is telling you the truth. Like sometimes I just think
Right.
that's very important for people to have a very open dialogue with their inner world. But then people get really freaked out about that. Like they think that you're going to lose control or like you're going to like go crazy or you're going to just, deny reality. Like there's some kind of danger. So people don't do it at all because they get all weirded out, but it must be one way or the other way, when in fact it's the key to your creativity and to your passion, I should say, and like to your way of existing. And if you close that all off because the outside world is conflicting with your inner world, you're just isolating yourself in a type of prison. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
denial. It's really weird, but people get really freaked out about the idea. They're like, oh no, I'm not going to be delusional and listen to my inner world. Or like, I don't want to make people think that I'm crazy, even though, you're, paying your taxes and taking care of certain amounts of responsibilities. But people get nervous about it because they've been conditioned to think so. I really do think that. And it's actually the opposite. You're crazy if you just do whatever you're told to do all the time without even thinking it through. Or with, just because they tell you on the outside and in reality itself, strangers that you don't even know. People should really think about that. Half the people that are talking to you day to day out in the world, you don't even know them. They don't know
Yep.
you, so that's really wild. I mean, sometimes you have to listen to yourself because, I mean, you know yourself the best. And yeah, the 3 a.m. window is a very good time, I think, that people have a lot of internal kind of coalescing. It's a good time to visit with people, kind of talk with them because they're in the same state of mind. So kind of those midnight talks, where you kind of, come to some sort of peace of mind about things, get down to settling things that you've been thinking on. I think it's something like that. And it keeps you awake at night because there's something you gotta like, it may wake you up because, you need to think about something that's bothering you or that maybe not bothering you, maybe just creative inspiration or something. But that time seems to be good for it.
Right. Another thing that is connected to all this is the stigma against any kind of like we talked about before with the alien abduction thing and just the encounters at that time of night. You know, that's all looped in as well, where total strangers will tell you, well, that's all in your head too, and that's all
Yeah.
just
Even though they
imagination.
were not even there. It's like
Right.
you, I mean, it's so weird that they, like people, I have had encounters. I
Yeah.
saw a dang goblin on a railroad track. Like I have told that story and people still think that like, it's like, look, I deal with extremely serious things all the time. And this was a long time ago. The encounter I'm talking about happened when I was like a teenager, you know? And I remember it still to this day. And I know what I saw. And I saw it very clearly. And the person that was with me, they saw it also. And I will never forget it. And if anyone would think like, I mean, I don't know. It's just weird how we doubt each other. We should.
Yes.
I mean, it's okay to doubt each other. But I think at the same time, I don't really care. Like if anybody, I mean, believe it or don't believe it, honestly. And I don't tell that story very often because you don't need to tell it a couple of times. You know what I mean? I
Yes,
guess.
but also you never know who when
Might
there's
not
new
have heard it
listeners.
yet. That's true. Yeah, so I mean, like with that
So,
story, it doesn't really tie into the 3 a.m. thing, but it was in the middle of the night. And I saw that flesh and blood. I saw it like a creature, like the way
right.
you see a raccoon or something. And it was like 4 foot tall. I'm 5 foot tall. It was a little like it. I couldn't tell because the distance was like from me to like I don't know, maybe 20, like I don't know, 30 feet, 40 feet, something like that away. And we used to go hang out on the railroad and walk the railroad tracks and everything behind our houses. And we were up there sitting watching the traffic go by underneath. This was outside of a city, a metropolis area. This was like the outskirts of it. there was like a gas station, and there were a bunch of woods, and there was a railroad track that went over this basically the highway that what would turn into the highway. And we used to go back there and just hang out. And there was like a wooded area, and we walk around and just look at whatever is going on in the world. Bored. Anyway, we were sitting up there and watching the traffic go underneath, and I was sitting cross-legged on the tracks. And I looked past my friend who was sitting across from me, also cross-legged on the tracks, and I saw this like 4-foot creature come up the road, like up the hill, and then on top. So it was like a hill that came up, and there was a tracks on top of it, and there were these lights overhanging the railroad track so far away, spaced out, and there are trees encroaching on each side. This is Missouri, and so like, it walked up the hill, and I thought it was I didn't really recognize what I just because it walked very casually up the hill, and then crossed the tracks, didn't look over, and went down the other side, and it was like it looked like a classic goblin. Like it wasn't wearing anything. Its proportions were all weird. It looked like it was flesh and blood.
Right.
And like I can remember like its side of its face in the light and everything. And we got up and like first I got like my eyes watered up. Like I remember that, like a feeling of like, and my friend was looking at me and turned and looked over their shoulder, and they said, let's go. And we got up and ran away to my brother's house. And like the whole time on our way there, like dogs in the neighborhood were barking, and it felt like that it was following us or something. It was weird because we were like, and we got to the house and we sat down and we were just like, draw what you saw, and so we sat down at the table. And we both just got a piece of paper and pen, we were young, and like drew it and showed it to each other. And it was the exact same thing. Then, like that night, the cat wouldn't come out of the closet. The cat, my cat was like hiding in the closet. And while I was like I was going to bed and everything, and I had my window and everything, and it felt weird. Like there was like something outside my house. The next day, my brother's dog, he had this big pit bull. Like this big, huge, like really tough dog, right? He was a really sweet baby, but he was this big, tough dog. And he was like a really good guard dog. Anyway, he'd go back to my mom's window and look out the window at the yard and just stare out there and like wouldn't go outside. We had to make him go outside. And when he went outside, like he like went and barked up at the tree, like as if there was something up in the tree. This went on for a couple of days. I did some research, and there actually is some lore around this region about this goblin-looking type creature. And apparently, like anyone who sees it, it will like harass them and stuff like that, like from then for a while, because it doesn't want to be seen. And like I just think that because we were like young and like really open-minded that we did see it, or it just actually maybe it didn't see us. I have no idea. But then after that, we went back. Another time, it felt like, I don't know, we were never really able to go back there and hang out again. We did like 2 more times. And just knowing that it's like from that point on, it felt like that whole woods area belonged to it. Like it was like its territory and we couldn't go in there because we might see it again. It was just so weird, but it didn't look like an alien. It looked like a goblin.
You know what I wonder about that? Those tracks, were those old tracks? Like was it an active railroad?
I think it was still occasionally active. I don't know. I mean, we would see stuff sometimes because there's like, I think it was still active. The lights and everything, I would assume so. I think it was going, right.
Sorry.
It's eating the roadkill from the railroad tracks, I think.
Well, and
or the homeless
also,
people. There were homeless people too that like would, could go missing. I have no idea. It's super weird. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say, I wonder if it may have had other reasons too, but maybe it didn't like it thought that it was not safe for you two to be hanging out on those tracks.
Oh my gosh, it could be. You're so right. I never thought of that. You know what's weird? Before that happened, we were down at the gas station getting fountain drinks and stuff, and this guy came in, and I can't remember what he looked like. It's so weird now. But he came in and he said something to me, and I looked at him like he was like weird. because
Mm.
I was young.
Yeah.
And then, like, because I was like, you're not supposed to talk to, I'm not supposed to be talking to anybody.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then went to the counter, and when they were checking out, they grabbed like a whole, they grabbed like a huge handful of beef jerky, like all the Slim Jims, like a ton of them,
Oh
and
yeah, I remember.
yeah, and like I was watching them, and my friend was, and we were just like, what in the world? Like, who gets like 25 sticks of beef jerky of like
It was a
Slim Jim?
lot.
It was weird. And then he went out the door, and we were following behind him a little bit. My cat jumped up. And he went up into, there was like a little path through the trees, and it went up the hill to the railroad tracks, and then it goes down the other side into like a trailer park behind there. And he went up there, and we were like trying to keep some distance, but he went up there. That's where we were going. And we're like, oh God, there's some weird person. Anyway, so we got up there, and we came up the hill, and he wasn't there. We didn't see him anywhere. And we were like, where'd he go? And then we just kind of forgot about it and went about our business. But we still kind of thought too that it like was a shapeshifter
Yeah.
coming out in human form to get beef jerky and then retreating back into its woods or something. I don't know. At the time, it just made sense because we couldn't figure out what we'd seen. But it
Well,
was so weird.
it is, and I mean, on this show, I've come across many posts about shapeshifters as well. That's not a thing that has stopped happening. One of the wildest to me is when I found a little while back where this couple was in a car driving down the road and they saw this older woman ahead of them, and she lifted up her hand like she was going to wave to ask for help, and then the writer said that she changed like shape and the colors and everything changed, and she turned into a deer, like the appearance of an actual regular deer,
It could happen.
and then went off the side of the road. So this is why I really don't write much of anything off anymore.
It could have happened. I mean, it's so
I,
hard
I
to know
just
because, what would you
I
do if
just
you saw
can't.
something like that? Like, you know, you don't
Yeah,
know till you do see. I haven't, it's not like I see stuff all the time.
right.
That's what's weird about it. That'd be weird if it just all the time. Like,
Right.
then you'd
No,
be a
it's
little
just
concerned. It's like just like a one off, and you're like, that was so
yes.
strange, you know?
But then you have so many of these one-offs that it's like, okay, even if half of the people are mistaken or exaggerating or hoaxing, there's still that other half. That's what
Yeah.
keeps me coming back to all this is
Here's the
that,
thing. The thing that I
yeah,
saw, like it was an impossible. This was like it looked like a weird giant frog with like a
right,
person's head. That's what I would describe. Like its proportions and everything were so odd, and but it looked like if you were to see, I mean, like a zoological creature, like something you might that they just haven't, like a weird monkey or something. You know what I mean?
right,
Like it could have been like it could be a real. It's a cryptid. I saw a cryptid.
yeah,
What you would call that, I think. But,
yeah,
or a goblin. You could also call it a goblin.
yeah, both. And I mean,
Yeah.
people see all kinds of things at night. I mean, little
Yeah.
little people, these shapeshifters, cryptids, or goblins, or all these different things, and it usually is just a one-off. And
Yeah.
but what's amazing to me also with a lot of experiences I found and read, and also with yours, is the way even if someone skeptical wants to say, well, whatever you saw wasn't what you thought you saw. Okay, then why were all the animals freaking out?
Yeah.
There's
That's
some kind of presence there
my
that
brother's
was there.
dog. I don't want to carry on too much about it, but
No, it's
even my
fine.
brother was like, what is up with Riggs, his dog, Like,
Yeah,
why is he acting so? And it's like, you know, it's so funny. I was like, oh, because of that goblin, but I didn't, you know what I mean? But like, even he noticed that his dog was like not acting like himself and was acting and barking up at the tree. And it was just seemed kind of odd. But definitely the cat, both of
yeah.
us, me and my friend, and it went on for like, I'd say 4 days of
Wow.
weirdness after the fact, where it seemed kind of like a weird feeling, kind of all pervasive around everything. So
Yeah.
it was impactful. And it's like there's a big insulation of time between the actual event and presently when I'm telling it. So there's all that insulation of time where you've had a lot of time to like maybe it was this, maybe it was that, and am I
Right.
remembering that completely accurate, that kind of thing. Whenever, in fact, it doesn't change the fact that it's what did happen. It's the circumstances of like, when you try to go into finer detail, those
Yeah.
are little discrepancies. Like, what was that dude wearing, or like, how many
Right.
beef jerky did he get?
Yeah.
Like
It
that sort of thing.
always annoys me when I hear people talk, like in a way, talk about how, well, I believe this person because their story never changed in one detail. Well, memory doesn't always work that way. So, not to
That's
say that
true.
they can't, remember everything and still tell it in the same way every detail all the time.
Yeah.
It's just
That
that,
might get boring anyway, but at the same time, the root is true. And that's
right.
how lore works. I mean, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you're like, maybe it depends on who you're telling it to, or
Right.
like the mood you're in while you're telling it this time of this
Right.
this story. It's
Yeah.
rooted in a true experience. So then people are like, oh, it's just stories, or oh, it's just lore or whatever. Of course it is. But the root of it is the memory that, like it can be sung and told different ways, but the point gets across and it gets kind of rooted in the other person's mind of something that they've heard about. And that way it continues to live on and people become aware that, oh, I know I've heard a story about this before, but I never thought it was real. And then it's really interesting because sometimes people have encounters and they're like, oh, wow, I've heard about something like this before. But it was carried
Yeah.
through stories told many different ways. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Folklore and mythology and all that stuff, and there's a lot of people out there. I think because it's what they've been told, and maybe they've never had an experience. Oh, you know, fairies or fae or other little folk or all that, Bigfoot, Sasquatch. That's all folklore. That's all. Well, maybe it is until you actually have an experience. That's
So,
and oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh no, I was just going to talk about like the whole fairies thing, like
Hmm.
fairies or elementals or whatever communicating with people.
Right.
I've had this weird thing where like if I'll find something odd like a feather, like I'll be walking and I'll come across a feather, right? I'll be like, oh, a
Hmm.
feather, that's cool. I'll pick it up and like put it in my bag, and then like maybe be walking or the next day find a feather, again. But I'll have that kind of thing happen where like I'll just find weird stuff sometimes. Like I'll find like 4 or 5 feathers. Like that's not like a dead bird somewhere. Like they're randomly
Right.
around. Like on a sidewalk or over here, or something, and like I'll just come across I'll be like, whoa, that's really weird. Like, walking down the sidewalk downtown and see like a feather on the ground. But like
Yes.
I'll see
Yeah.
weird symbology like that. And it feels to me, because I take that stuff really, I take it not seriously, but like I account for it as symbolism.
Hmm.
Like I like to kind of live in that kind of mindset that this is symbolic, that I'm
Right.
having an experience with the world around me. And I think that it's really important. But oftentimes when I have that happen with the feathers or whatever, I think it's got something to do with like, the urban fairies or whatever. I don't know.
Right.
Spirits, what elementals. I don't know what, you would call it.
Words are hard,
Yeah.
and they can apply to many things or the same thing, and that's why all this is so complicated but interesting. But no, the thing I was going to say earlier, I was thinking about too. You mentioned everyone can have their doubts, and I think I do agree that's fine. I think the main thing now is, and always should be, I don't expect. I think I even said this on the show about my abduction experiences. I don't expect everyone to believe me. It's just that I hope that, you know, I mean, really the bottom line is we need to still be kind to each other and respectful to each other, and even if we don't, uh, we're not sure about the experience someone had. That doesn't mean, and then you see it so much now, especially social media and all that. If the whole thing with if you don't agree, then that's terrible. You're a terrible person. No, people don't always have to agree on everything,
No, it's
but we
just a
can
weird
still
place to
be.
argue anyway. Like it's not
Yeah.
like politics or religion, like where like the point is to argue. Like
Right.
it feels that way, There's like
Yeah.
that's the fun of it. Like oh, we're gonna talk about this and you know, be like sword fighting mentally, like about
Right.
ideas and concepts and really challenging each other philosophically, psychologically, emotionally. It's kind of a challenge. It's fun.
Mm.
Now, when you're talking about experiences and stuff like that, I mean, a person tells a story and you're like, I don't believe it, it's like, okay. I mean,
Right.
that's fine. It's not a theory. It's an experience. It's not
Yeah.
like you're saying like, I feel this way about it. Well, I don't believe you. It's like, okay, I mean, that's just what happened. But I
Right.
mean, it's not like the same thing as philosophical discussion, like you're bantering. So yeah,
Right.
it doesn't even make any sense. I don't even know why people would even, you know,
Yeah.
like, yeah, I don't believe you thing. Like it's like, okay, I mean,
Yep.
it's not really, yeah. Don't ever take it personal, right?
Right. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, I think that's a good place to end this one because that was a good, good view of everything there that we want to talk about and a lot more. And I, I'm really glad that you shared that experience with the whatever that was, the goblin, because it just made me think there was something that I always wondered about that with
I will never
the
forget it. I'm gonna
tracks.
probably
Like,
write a little children's book about that or something, you know?
yeah, like the tracks. I mean, that's what I really wonder if like they were like you shouldn't be hanging out in these tracks
That's a good point. I never thought of it
just
that
in
way. I
case.
always thought of it like a territorial animal, you know?
Right.
So I never really thought of it as being like, hey, it's dangerous for you. That's a good point. It's possible. We were just sitting right in the middle, you know? So, so
Yeah. Well, thank you for being here and with me as always, and look forward to talking to you next time.
you too. I had a great time. Have a good night.
You as well. And thank you all for listening to this, however you or wherever you're listening to this. And we will talk to you next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.